Welcome to the Low Tox Life podcast.
We have been almost savaged into thinking that all cholesterol is bad. So the cholesterol in an egg, don't go near it. The cholesterol in a lamb chop, maybe in the tail, there's a little bit of cholesterol. All of those things. Now, the evidence clearly shows that foods containing cholesterol in the sort of amounts we should be eating are fine.
Welcome new and long-time listeners. I'm Alex, your host, and I'm thrilled to have Gerald Quigley back on the show. For decades, he's been both a pharmacist and a master herbalist, and today he is back to discuss men's health, the basic preventative strategies, why they matter, and what men can do to look after yourselves as you age. So whether you're a caring partner or family member, or a man yourself, Gerald puts things so beautifully and clearly. And in the show notes this week, I'll also pop a couple of shows that we've done in the past on men's health, if this is a topic that you want to explore further. A little note from our wonderful Low Tox partners that help us put this show on for you and give you great offers, and then we'll jump straight in. Our major partner, AusClimate, is an Australian offer, and they give you 10% off with the code LowToxLife all year round. A question I get asked often is, do I need a dehumidifier, an air filter, or both? And the thing to remember is an air purification helps reduce the toxic burden of your indoor air across all types of things, from pollens, dust mite, mold, VOCs from building materials. It reduces the level of toxins in your indoor air. Dehumidification reduces the moisture in your indoor air, helping you prevent the growth of mold and the contamination of your soft furnishings, clothes, and of course yourself. Because when it's over 60% humidity, mold is then given the perfect environment to grow. All it needs is dust particles or any kind of soft furnishing that it can grab onto, and it will literally start its job of multiplying and decomposing things. So dehumidification is for moisture control, reduction, and of course, therefore, the prevention of the growth of mold in your indoor environment. And air purification is for the overall reduction of toxic burden of a multitude of things for your indoor air. So hopefully that helps answer that question. A big thank you to AusClimate for being our partner, and let's get into the show. Gerald, welcome back. Double episode, and now we're tackling men's health. Well, this is an interesting one because men aren't so good at looking after themselves until the poop hits the fan.
I gather we are different.
Yes.
In so many different ways. We are pig-headed. We don't really feel that probably our health is all that important until the poop hits the fan or some major challenge comes out of the blue, which has probably been there unrecognised or unacknowledged for quite a while, which is where partners, spouses, girlfriends, wives, mistresses, doesn't matter. Someone to say, I reckon you need to go and have this checked. Or why don't you go off and have a chat to somebody? The role of the local pharmacist is important here, particularly now because men are doing a little more shopping.
Mm-hmm.
Because it appears that we have to be taking more responsibility around the house, which, that means that we might be sent out for messages late in the afternoon or early evening when we come home. Although working from home might change that, I suppose. But look, the important thing is that we're now, as blokes, probably, but unwittingly, talking more about our health. I'm a member of a men's club, and it's funny how the prostate boys tend to hang out together and other groups hang out together. And I tend to be often the glue that sticks them all together. And we've got some retired GPs and a few others, but there does come a stage where the reckoning occurs on our body, and perhaps our attempt today at trying to encourage men to not look down to the ground, but to look up at themselves and think, how do I look? What comments and feedback I'm getting from my wife or my kids. If they say, Dad, you're cranky, Well, there's probably a fair reason why. There may be. It could be the stress of work, could be financial pressures, it could be anything. So we need to be able to express ourselves. Now, women have it easy because they can talk. They just get together and talk it out. Blokes don't do that. I've got two friends that have been house husbands, home fathers, and their perspective on health is completely different because they tended to be on milk and fruit at the kindergarten, and they've tended to take the kids to school and to the train to university, so they get a chance to talk to them. I've got three girls, and I used to take them all to school every morning, and that was time that I valued so much. We'd laugh and we'd argue, but it was just a terrific way to start the day in an environment where if any of us disagreed with someone else, you couldn't just leave the room because you're in a car that was moving. So you had to sit there and defend yourself. So that was good. So look, I think, Alex, overall, we're probably heading in a better direction than we were a generation ago. And we are probably communicating our feelings better with a lot of the health issues that are confronting. So currently we've got Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. We had Are You OK Day recently, which is a wonderful non-threatening way of saying to someone, are you okay? And these initiatives are very gentle, but very important, and we blokes need to take them on board. So as a general sum up of all that waffle that I've just given, it's time we took responsibility.
Mm. And isn't it interesting that the home father mates that you talked about there are the ones who have a completely different perspective? So for me, that just illustrates so powerfully that this is societal roles that have been placed on us within systems that tend to amplify women's caring, noticing, talking more. But given the opportunity and the life choice, or life have to, if you end up a single father for whatever reason, you actually can morph into being just as caring, just as communicative, just as right. And I think that's so powerful to sit with that.
We've got this main fellow that I speak to often was an academic. I used to say to him, obviously never had a real job. And he's watched lost his wife, so remarried a much younger girl, but has watched his kids thrive and flourish. And to see him with his children has a different relationship completely with his two boys and daughter than probably, and I have three girls, although I've got a lot of grandsons, but we all have different relationships with those individuals, but more so also as a group. And that's good. So it just goes to show how society is so different. But we need, one thing we have failed as a group, we blokes, is taking responsibility for our own health. And we sometimes have to be bullied into making a decision to go along. We've got a fear and a phobia about annual checkups. We worry about what might be found, which is usually nothing. We worry about what the doctor will say, that we might have to have our blood pressure checked, and blood pressure is not called the silent killer for nothing. We may actually have to own up to our weight and our waist circumference, and we may get a lecture. Now, that usually doesn't happen, but we may be encouraged to actually take a couple of different directions to help our blood pressure become more stable, and or to help our waistline remain or at least shrink a little by perhaps altering a couple of the hardest things to change, which are lifestyle issues.
And what age do you think men should be looking at starting to bring an annual checkup on board?
Everybody's different. And I'll qualify that by saying that I think if you haven't had a checkup by 40, it's time to do it. And you might do that every 2 or 3 years, depending on the results. But certainly after 50, it needs to be annual. And if you're in a high stress job, it certainly is just fundamental for the sake of your health and the health of your family. Now, if you have genetic issues, so there might be prostate cancer in your family or bowel cancer, then you may have more regular checks than that. And I know it's a nuisance, but there are a number of cancers these days that if detected early, you haven't done anything wrong. You can blame your ancestors and it's just being genetically inherited. But if they are picked up early, they can be treated and you will live a very, very long life. But if you ignore them, then it may come back to haunt you with more vigorous treatments in years to come.
Yeah. And with the main things that are affecting men in their health, let's just say they might not have had a checkup before or for a long time. And let's just say it might be the partner currently listening thinking, I want to put this in front of my partner because this guy might actually make him listen. What would you like to say to men who are avoiding checkups about raising their awareness on how they're feeling, looking, acting, and why it might be time for one?
I'll look into the camera. Boys, get a grip on yourself and just go and get it done. There is no shame, no pain in actually having a chat to your doctor about the elementary stuff that we know that as we get older, and we all are all living longer, for which we have to be very grateful. But in order to maintain your quality of life, there needs to be some checkups. Now, for those of you driving a fancy car, every time there's a spot of rain, you go out there and you give it a bit of a wipe and a polish. Now, you don't have to be that about your health, but you would have your vehicles serviced. You need your body at least checked, and if necessary, minor servicing to keep things on track. That may or may not involve medication. It usually doesn't. It just depends. If you leave it too long, then medication will be involved to just get things back to normal. I have constant comments from people, from men who say, I used to have high blood pressure, but I don't anymore because I don't take the pills anymore because my blood pressure is normal. And I have to explain in very simple childlike terms that the reason your blood pressure is now okay is that you've been taking the pills. So doesn't it make sense to take that preventative measure and that treatment every day to make sure you do keep your blood pressure under control? And they say, oh, you hadn't really thought about it that way. Oh, because they know.
Yeah, well, this happens a lot in psychiatry,
Course,
doesn't it? Where it's, but I
yes, it
feel
does.
fine, so I'm stopping my pills. But then
Yes, it does.
because there's a lack of self-awareness in the psychiatric presentation when it's happening,
Yes,
everyone else can see you're no longer fine, but
yes.
you can't.
And I wonder, Alex, whether it's because they've been told to take something or to do something instead of being encouraged and their partner's family, whatever, involved in the discussion. You know, the reason I'm giving your husband this medication is A, B, and C. And if you've got any further questions, then don't hesitate to get back to me if I can explain things further, or take it up when you get the medication dispensed from your pharmacist, because he or she will back up all of this, and maybe we'll have an extra minute or so to explain things further. But don't, just because you've seen me, I've listened, measured, whatever, I've written a few things or pushed some buttons on the computer, there it is, see you later. That's not what care's all about. That's the start of the care. And we've got to make sure things are followed up all the way through so we get the expected outcome. Now, not all blokes are like that, but a fair number are. And we are learning more and more and more that the longer we put things off, often the more difficult it is. You and I talked in another session about lifestyle things, and more than ever, they apply to blokes, but they're probably harder for men to implement. So when we talk about getting adequate sleep and restful sleep, and we talk about sensible exercise and comfortable exercise, and obviously eating well. And if you enjoy a beer, fine, unless you've got prostate issues, because you should not drink beer with prostate issues. But all of that's fine. And in fact, having a glass of wine at night with your dinner, one or maybe one and a half, and it's not, that doesn't mean you go out and you buy a 600 ml size glass. I'm talking about a reasonable. I've got a smart aleck mate who did that. He said, you had one glass, look at that. So all of that often means that you can have a slower meal, because I spent 4 years in boarding school and I can eat like a hurricane if I need to, but that doesn't help. So we have issues of reflux in men. We have gut health issues with everybody, but often blokes will just put up with it and think it's just normal. And the fact that I've got a beer belly, well, that's just because Dad had one, so it must be okay. So these are the sorts of things which all can challenge men's health as they age. Remembering now that we blokes are living much longer than what we used to do. Not as long as the ladies, but we're up there. We're starting to challenge you.
And let's come back to blood pressure because I think this is an interesting one where I've known two people now who never had their medication reviewed until the point where they were actually fine under the, like for one, it was the death of a husband and it was just an extremely stressful time that drove her blood pressure up. Then she started fainting and, years later, and it had never been reviewed. She actually didn't need it anymore.
No.
And so how can we have more empowered conversations around those scenarios of review? And when it comes to blood pressure, let's just say you haven't had anything diagnosed yet and you're feeling okay. Can we rely on the magic of the herbal world or certain key nutrients that we should keep an eye on the levels of in our blood to ensure they're high, to make sure we're supporting healthy blood pressure before it can turn bad?
It's a fairly complicated thing, and we'll just go through those things.
Yeah.
I'm a great fan of home blood pressure monitoring. Now, the scenario I often hear from a man is that he goes in, he's stressed to the eyeballs. What are they going to find? He's been sitting out in the waiting room with people that are unwell, and he's running behind. The doctor's an hour behind. I shouldn't be here. I knew I shouldn't have come. I told my wife. So guess what? He's going to have an elevated reading. And that's normal. Now, in some cases, sadly, that person is often given a blood pressure medicine and told to take one each morning. So the next morning when they're home and their blood pressure is normal, they take the pill, stand up from the breakfast table and fall over because their blood pressure has dropped. So if you have a home monitor, you measure it at home in the home environment. I'll explain that. It means you take some advice on the best one to buy. They're not expensive. Great insurance. You take measurements, say, over 4 or 5 days. You take them at least twice, better 3 times a day. You take 3 measurements each time and you record the third. Record the third measurement. And
wow, I can just hear men everywhere in the world saying, what? You want me to do it how many times?
I know. Look, it's a pain and I don't mind being a pain. But otherwise, it's going to expose you to blood pressure medicines because you're stressed when you go to the doctor. Now, from a herbal perspective, the herb with the clinical evidence is aged garlic extract. That has evidence to actually help balance the highs and lows because our blood pressure, as you know, is fluctuating every day. If you're running for the bus, if you're reading something that's annoying you in the paper, if you're getting ticked off for something at home that you've done, your blood pressure goes up. It's how quickly and how effectively it returns to normal that's what it's all about. And that's really the definition of blood pressure. So if you're taking it at home, it then gives you a bit of an idea of how you're going when you can present those readings to your doctor, who will appreciate them enormously. And that's going to remove the fact that you might get a bit of a bollocking if your blood pressure's high and you say, no, it's not, it's normal. Well, then you can present your evidence straight away. Lifestyle-wise, obviously, go easy on the alcohol, go easy on the stress levels, make sure you manage those, get restful sleep. It means turning off the television when you're watching the current aths at the moment and you want to see Gut at 11 o'clock at night. Whether he wins or loses, you'll find out in the morning. So there's no really big deal. And also to just make sure about volume of food you eat at night time. The more you eat at night, the harder your tummy's got to work to digest it. You won't sleep well. So maybe an earlier meal, chewing well, as your mother used to tell you, slow down, and you will not only feel better when you go to bed, but you'll sleep better and wake up more rested in the morning. Now, I know it sounds like someone's mother talking to them, but in the busyness that we all cope with today, we forget the hard things. We just forget the simple things. And I'll use sleep as an example. We're staring at a screen, as you and I are doing now, but now the screens are 3 feet wide by 2 feet high. And our brain says, boy, this is exciting. We're out in the sunshine at daylight, so we're not producing any melatonin. We'll just sit here and the blue light's buzzing my brain. We turn the screen off at 10:30 and we expect to be asleep by 11 o'clock. It's not going to happen. You might be lucky, and it does, but usually over time you won't sleep. So you've got to turn off the screens. And that just doesn't mean television. It means Facebook, the iPhone, every single thing. Dim the lights, make yourself cup of tea. So you do this, you set a time for bed, half an hour at least before, turn off the screens, put on the kettle, have a little snack. Mine, 11 o'clock's my time. My little snack is a couple of biscuits and cheese because I'm a country boy and I like cheese.
Cheese and crackers.
I did read recently where cheese stops you sleeping. I don't know what wacko wrote that, but anyway, it got out there in the social media. But that person needs to get a life and enjoy a book, not a magazine. Read a book that you can go to each time you sit down and you do this routine at night. Your bedroom's got to be quiet, it's got to be cool, and no screens. Now, chaps, if you do wake up for that inevitable bathroom visit, and I'm not talking about 6 bathroom visits, that's a different topic. If you're getting up, that's fine. Pull back the covers, being very careful not to disturb the person next to you. Flip your pillow over, go to the bathroom, have a twinkle, have some water, get back into the cooler bed, and you'll go back to sleep faster.
And I have to recommend here separate quilts. It's a game changer
Oh, there you go.
in midlife.
Well, for various reasons, because there seems to be a little bit of evidence that certain times of life, the person lying beside you can go through some heat episodes. So
Yes, exactly.
And windows opened and doors open. That didn't happen. My wife breezed through menopause fairly well with the help of a herb called Vitex. So she breezed through that, but it can be a problem, but separate quilts make sense.
They do. They really do. Game changer, because you're going through these different phases of life, different wake-ups all of a sudden.
That's right.
So can I talk about andropause? Because I think that's something that's not talked about enough, men's midlife and what's happening hormonally there and what men can do to navigate. You know, I've heard male friends say, God, I just all of a sudden just feel no desire to hustle or like get that project across the line. I've run out of all care factor.
And it's a time of life, isn't it, Alex, where your family are growing, you're desperately trying to be as independent as you can by 45 or 50, and everybody's different, but let's take the age 50. Now, by 50, obviously, you're not producing the energizing mitochondrial support called coenzyme Q10. You're not producing that much. Probably not producing as much testosterone, and you're wishing you were Arnold Schwarzenegger and you're not. You're probably not exercising as usefully as you might. I live here on the beach in Melbourne, and I do pass runners as I walk every day. And I don't know if they're enjoying themselves. No one actually smiles, and no one says good morning as though I'm running past. I say good morning and smile, and they look as if they're just about to, line up before a firing squad. Exercise has got to be, but you've got to leave space for that, and you've got to also have a little bit of me time. There is no shame in having a bit of a break for 10 or 15 minutes where you might just close your eyes. Now, I'm not talking about that post-dinner glass and a half of wine, sit in a chair, nod off and snore. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I call it resting my eyes time, and I'll often have 10 or 15 minutes during the day. Sit in the sun in your chair, near some fresh air, and just relax. Just take your time. Set an alarm so you're not going to fall asleep for hours, but you'll normally wake anyway. Now, so we're talking here about the hormonal changes. The testosterone is the herb, is the hormone. Coenzyme Q10 is the energizer, and you can use coenzyme Q10 in the ready-to-use form. That's called ubiquinol, and you can buy that as a supplement. And the evidence is clear. It helps your heart strength, its energy production at a cellular level, and almost all feedback is positive where, yes, I do have more energy. From a testosterone perspective, this often sadly manifests itself in intimacy where both parties are saying, I'm too tired, I don't, it's just not the same, whatever, having good open, and we're not having a sex therapy session here, but we blokes worry about our performance. Performance anxiety is something you read about, but it's real. I have emails and contact from 75-year-old blokes who worry about their performance anxiety. Now, I try and reassure that age that we've got to get things in perspective here, and you can't perform every night of the week because
You've had a good run, mate. Slow it down.
it's not possible. And if it involves another person, there's got to be a bit of communication between what would you expect, and I know what I want in between my ears, but what's happening below my belt. Is that you comfortable with that, or am I just expecting a bit much? Now, those discussions, bearing in mind that depending on what else is happening in your life, may push things to one side for a little while until you're both in the mood, because often intimacy involves mood and setting time, and we don't set the time that probably we did when we were younger, when we couldn't wait. So things do change, and this is also important. A loss of testosterone in men is not the end of the world, because there are other issues involved here, but that's another reason for that checkup. That if you are worried, if you find you're constantly fatigued, if your sexual prowess has disappeared, if you are really just not enjoying the things that you used to enjoy, and that might mean outside activities, might be meeting groups of people that you enjoy their company, because we're talking also mental health here. Have a chat to your doctor.
Yeah.
It's time for a checkup. And that doesn't mean you're over the hill. It just means that the hill at the moment is a bit steep to climb and you need a little help to get to the top. But once you understand all of these factors are a result of things that maybe you can change, then it's the difference. And it's the same. I know we've chatted cold and flu. Blokes are notorious. They're probably exposed to more infections than people who are working from home or whatever. If you've got an issue, then speak to your pharmacist, but do something about it. Because if you're pretending to be the head of the household, and that's been put, I know that generation now is behind us, but your kids are looking to you they'll copy what you do. And if you don't take care of yourself, they probably won't really be encouraged to look after themselves as well. So if you're an asthmatic, look after yourself, just in case your children end up with asthma as well. Use the puffers that you've got. Show them, explain to them what they do. If you happen to pick up an infection, use one of the clinically proven herbs like EA 575 to get the muck off your chest. Do it and lead by example. Inspire. There's that word again. Inspire your kids to do what you do because they know you're looking after yourself. And there's nothing, and I've got plenty of grandchildren, and a lot of times they say, how come you do what you do and my friend's father or grandfather doesn't do what you do? You don't come to the playground with a 4-year-old and help. These days, 4-year-olds just tend to do your head in. You don't come along and they don't come along and do what you do. How come? And I enjoy saying, well, because I actually enjoy it. I've got the energy to do it. Let's do it together. Have a bit of a laugh. And the fact that I take you up the street for an ice cream's got nothing to do with it. We're here to enjoy the activity.
Waters Co Australia have been a leading alkaline remineralized filtered water solution for over a decade. In fact, first one I bought about 14 years ago. I love that not only do they take out everything from chlorine to fluoride, heavy metals, pesticide residue, herbicide residue, viruses, bacteria, PFAS, and they remineralize even the tiny compact 7-stage filter that goes into the mini Waterman and jug. The benchtop options are brilliant for families, and you have 3 to 5 years for that refill before you have to replace it. So from an economy perspective, it's also the best value for the quality of water that you get. We literally don't leave home without one of our Waters Co products. You have 15% off with the code LOWTOX15 percentage symbols. You can use the auto applied code link in the show notes under YouTube or from our link in bio over on Instagram. Get 15% off site-wide, very generous. It's one of my top low tox recommendations. Go check out which one is best for your home situation and budget and make the most of it. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, such great advice. And so ubiquinol, could men at a certain age just start incorporating that and just take whatever the packet
Absolutely
says on the back?
We produce coenzyme Q10, well, all of us, men and women, up to about age 20. And we can't get enough from our food. You've got to eat about 4 kilograms of broccoli and have 6 kilograms of camembert cheese. And even though a sumo wrestler might enjoy those quantities, for most of us, it's impossible. So you can support that, if needed, with advice by taking coenzyme Q10. But the research now shows that the ready-to-use form, which has got a slightly different name called ubiquinol, helps. Originally, it was discovered as helping heart. It was heart muscle. So this helps energy generation within all muscles. So ubiquinol is used for leg fatigue in athletes, mental stress in nursing professions, and all the evidence is there. Fertility, it's used for sperm quality and sperm motility. All the evidence is there because it's energy production at cellular level. So there are all of these things that help. Now, a lot of these things these days are being caused by environmental stress. All We don't know what we're breathing. And the food, a lot of people have a lot of the ready prepared food, and sadly, that's not the quality that they should be having. So again, it goes back to advice, doesn't it? It's building the relationship with your trusted practitioner who understands the challenges because you've explained them. And if they don't understand the challenge, they will keep asking you questions. Now, that's not for any other reason other than they're trying to help you solve the problem with them at the same time. So we're all on the same team.
Mm.
It's not them telling you what to do, it's them encouraging you what to do so you understand and you expect to get an outcome.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioned going up a hill before as a metaphor,
Mm.
but I think of people I've known who've had heart attack events and thankfully been able to be saved by surgery thereafter. And for them, in retrospect, in both cases, it was just noticing how unbelievably challenging going up a hill started to become. Are there any heart health red flags that men could be already starting to raise their awareness on to know that maybe they need to A, get the checkup, or B, start involving some heart support?
We've chatted before about listening to your body. So if you're doing anything that's a little strenuous and you get some chest pain or you get pain down your left arm, that's a red flag. If you find going up any hill, any elevated space, climbing stairs, is causing you to be breathless, then it's time for a checkup. And that's showing that you've got pressure on your heart. Now, that could be caused by the weight you're carrying, which is often unrecognized until you're told, if you lose 10 kilos and this is how you do it because I'm going to refer you to a dietitian or a nutritionist, then this will make a real difference. So the red flags are those things that just happen for an unexplained reason. And if you can't think, well, I've noticed this and noticed that, then you need to get a grip on yourself, because that's adding extra pressure to your family in case an emergency ever happened. And this is also what we do when we're younger and in middle age, can set up behavioural patterns about what we might do or not. Lepers don't change their spots. If you're a bit of a slob at age 25, you're probably going to be a bit of a bigger slob at 55 and almost an immovable object by 75. So it makes sense, doesn't it? Just do the elementary things. Be optimistic, be inspired about your health. Don't wait till something goes wrong. Don't wait for someone to say, it's about time you did A, B, or C. Proactively think about what you might do to make the next, a bit like playing golf. I don't know if you're a golfer, but the challenge of golf is to make the shot you're playing, getting ready for the next shot to make it easier. So you put yourself in a position where it's easier to do the next and implement it, and actually it becomes an enjoyable game. I'm still trying to do that after 60 years, but still, that's the aim.
Well, I recognise that strategy, but over for my sport, which is tennis.
Yes.
Because you do the same thing.
You set up a shot without being silly. So you don't go for the big shot. You set up a shot that makes it easier to do the next. Every sport's the same. But we don't look at our health in that regard. We just think we'll keep going until something happens, and then bingo. And we've all got friends that over 3 days go from being vital and energetic and that have never had a checkup to suddenly finding themselves in the back of an ambulance and being hauled off to hospital because of the unexpected fall or the pain down the arm, which was never recognised, and they've got angina and they're having a heart attack, or they're having a stroke because their blood pressure, through unrecognised blood pressure measurements, hasn't been recognised. So now we know. Keep your monitor at home. If you don't want to tell anybody, lock yourself in your bedroom and do it. No one's going to spy on you. No one's going to what? Just do it. Lock yourself in the cupboard. It's all about you and helping those around you understand that you're doing your bit.
And in the case of something like cholesterol, which has a huge amount of, I'd say, confusion around it now, because we've learnt so much more about it being more of a red flag symbolically for something being wrong rather than the problem itself.
Wonderful.
Exactly. And I do feel like finally that's got a broad consensus, but we still are scared often, either by our doctors or by our own understanding of a subject, that we see high cholesterol and we think, oh my God, I'm now massively at risk for a heart attack. Can you help people understand the broader picture?
Okay, now look, and we'll get it in perspective here. I'm not a cardiologist, and they all have a view, even though they can't agree in many instances on the issues around cholesterol. So cholesterol is a substance which is secreted by or made by bile salts in our liver, and bile salts we make to help us digest fats. So our gallbladders play a role in digestion, as we know, and cholesterol is produced from bile salts. Now, cholesterol is good because it protects brain health, it helps hormone production, it has a role to play. However, we have been almost savaged into thinking that all cholesterol is bad. So the cholesterol in an egg, don't go near it. The cholesterol in a lamb chop, maybe in the tail, there's a little bit of cholesterol. All of those things. Now, the evidence clearly shows, Alex, that foods containing cholesterol in the sort of amounts we should be eating are fine. And sadly, a person who has got elevated levels will be told, righto, no full-fat dairy, which is cardioprotective, no eggs, even though you have 2 a day and you've had 2 a day for 100 years, no eggs. Now, all of that's been disproven. It takes forever to unprove what has been bullied into us by various interested parties in the food industry, and that's usually the low-fat, no-sugar components.
The super processed food
That's
crowd.
right. And we're learning now that artificial sweeteners increase dramatically our risk of dementia. Now, that's all out there in the evidence field, but no one talks about it because the food industry, which is self-regulated, says, trust us, we're okay. So going back to cholesterol. Cholesterol is all about balance. The total cholesterol, which we are quoted, is a rather meaningless figure because cholesterol comes in various fractions and various particle sizes. If you have large particle size cholesterol, that actually is protective because it can't be absorbed into your bloodstream. If you have low particle size, that is a problem. Now, that straight away causes confusion because we are told there is good HDL and bad LDL cholesterol. What we're not told is that if you have your level of so-called good cholesterol, if that's low particle size, that's not good at all. It's not good because it's getting absorbed. However, that's not what we're told. You've got to keep those, but until we test the ratios, we don't know. If we have, from the issue of bad cholesterol, if we have high levels of large particle size of the so-called bad cholesterol, that's actually okay. Now, we've been fed all this information for so long that we don't accept that now. We just say, no, it's all about the good and the bad and the total. Well, it's not. We need to encourage people to ask their doctor to explain their individual ratios and which particular ratio gives you the cardiovascular risk, which is the ratio of the good to the total. And that needs to be explained. Now, so if you enjoy eggs and things like that, that's absolutely fine because the evidence shows that very little cholesterol in food. Now, if you're having, and we've all got that Uncle Jack who's grown up on eating chop tails and will go around at the end of a meal and gather them all up and eat them, Jack's beyond redemption because that's just silly. But there are fiber supplements available now which will help to restore the cholesterol balance. And there's a fiber called beta-glucan, which has the clinical evidence in cereal form and powder form to restore cholesterol levels. Now, whether you decide to take that on its own or in combination with your statin if you've been prescribed them, that's up to you. But it has all the clinical evidence and feedback even from GPs, which is very surprising, at the outcomes of using regularly every day that cereal. If you want to reestablish your levels of the so-called LDL or bad cholesterol, guess what? Ubiquinol plays a role in that as well.
Ooh,
so it's a bit of a multi-purpose thing. And this is not about ubiquinol today, but if there are, I think it's a bit like the osteoporosis argument. The cholesterol industry is an industry. I think most of us would agree, and cardiologists are now saying that maybe they're first line too quickly. We should be looking at educational things on your weight, how many carbs you're eating, because carbohydrates can be a problem, a much greater problem than probably fat. Because most of us don't eat enough fat because we're told it's bad for you, although we know that olive oil and all of those things are actually cardioprotective as well. But we're not encouraged to use that. That's why the Mediterranean diet or the so-called Mediterranean diet, they have lots of fat in there. They have regular dairy and they have olive oil.
Mm.
Oils. But we're told by the food industry, oh no, have this low-fat stuff. We've modified it to within an inch of its life. We've added flavors,
Yeah.
we've added that. Trust us, it's okay. It's not okay.
No. And so let's just drill down there
Mhm.
on an empowering conversation,
Yes,
because if we are to change the being prescribed a statin as soon as
yes,
there's a problem,
yes.
how can we have a conversation with our health professional about a window of time to try lifestyle and a couple of key supplements first and make a plan together?
I might qualify this by saying that if you have had a cardiovascular event, for example, a stroke,
Mm,
a statin is very important. We have all the
yeah.
evidence in the world of what's called primary prevention. So if you've had an attack, some sort of cardiovascular event, then a statin is normally prescribed for you, and that's
Hmm.
the perfect thing. To extrapolate that and say if your levels are high, the statin is going to prevent a heart attack is a pretty broad brush. And we don't have a lot of compelling evidence to say that. So as secondary prevention, the evidence isn't as strong. So the question to ask, having been given, Alex, I've got some news. Actually, I've got to look serious. Alex, I have some news. You have your
Yes.
cholesterol's up, and I'm sorry if I'm a bit facetious, but that's how. I mean, it's just the conversation should be open. Your cholesterol's up. We need to have a chat about it. There obviously then is an opportunity to say, well, without going straight on to a medication, what other options do I have? Obviously, being referred to a dietitian is comforting because then you will be reassured that a lot of the food you eat is okay. Cholesterol is manufactured in our liver.
Mm,
Liver function's very important, and liver supporting herbs like milk thistle help really also make a big difference in cholesterol.
mm,
The cereal I mentioned, or the fiber I mentioned, works by absorbing the bile acids. So it grabs the bile acids, which means that our liver's trying to make more cholesterol. So the cholesterol's called back to the liver, and it's therefore reduced levels in our bloodstream. That's the rationale there. You might also be referred to someone to get advice on appropriate exercise. The dietitian will help you with weight options, although I know lots of skinny people that have got cholesterol issues, and I'm sure you do as well. So weight it's an indicator, but it's not always the reason. Stress plays a big role. Stress raises blood pressure, it does all sorts of things, and I'm certain it plays a role in cholesterol levels. So these are things. Now, you might say to your GP, in fact, the GP will often say, tell you what, you go off and do whatever you want to do, and we'll measure it again in a month.
mm.
A month's no, it's not going to make the slightest bit of difference. It's just you've got to have 6 months or longer. If your ratios are really out of control, then you need obviously expert advice. But
Yeah.
a lot of things we can do that even with a slightly elevated total cholesterol, provided our ratios are in order, is absolutely fine. I prescribe ubiquinol because it reassures everybody about the bad cholesterol. Bad cholesterol is anathema to most people. Heavens above, my levels, whatever.
Mm,
It sensibly raises the good cholesterol, which is good because they're all in balance. Ubiquinol, important. I'm a great, as I mentioned before, aged care garlic fan because it actually helps circulation, particularly in the carotid artery, which can often be a problem. That's the big artery going up to your brain. Exercise,
hmm.
relaxation, all of those things. I mean, how often do we just go back to those simple things? And in most cases, they do make a difference. But again, it's the ratios. We cannot be led down the garden path of being berated about a total level of cholesterol because it doesn't really mean all that much.
Mm. So don't panic at the first instance of an elevated
No.
cholesterol,
And
but
it
come
is
back to
panic.
the
Yeah,
basics.
it is panic, Alex. That person
Mm,
that says, "Oh, shocking news! I've got high cholesterol," and I'd say, "Really? Keep it quiet because everybody will want high cholesterol if you've got it because you're so well. So let's just unpack here what's going on." And usually that person feels very reassured when you explain, which has never happened, explain what the role of cholesterol is, both good and bad, what things actually elevate your cholesterol, and it can sometimes be genetics, not a lot, but probably up 10% or so. So mum or dad has got elevated cholesterol that's out of control. There's a fair chance that you will as well. Look at your lifestyle behaviours, hardest thing to change. But all of those things do play a role.
mm.
Not hard.
Yeah, very good advice.
And there's lots of people that are quite young who are on That's the worrying trend, that we're seeing the 40 plus, used to be oldies that got the cholesterol medication. Mind you, they need the cholesterol. If you're 80 plus taking cholesterol lowering medication and you've never had a cardiovascular event, that's another discussion you should have with your doctor. And a lot of people are admitted to hospital in those age groups, and the first thing that happens is they take them off the statin.
Wow, really?
It's inappropriate.
Mm.
Please don't stop your statin because I've said that. Discuss it with your doctor. It's
Yeah.
a discussion you have. You need the justification.
Yeah. And what I've learnt from this chat that's come up a few times now across both episodes is there is no harm. In fact, you should, in asking a question like, can you actually talk me through in more detail why I need to be taking this and what the evidence is? I'd like to see it.
Now, if the doctor says to you, if you don't take this, Alex, I reckon in 3 years we won't have you, it's a different story. But there must be other things going on as well. It's not just the cholesterol there. There must be other things going on. So you need the full picture. And I'll give you a little anecdote. My mum I lost at 97. Now, 92 or 93, and I used to go along to her consults. And her GP said, Margaret, who was about 5'1", 4 cesareans and very strong woman, last of about 10 that was to leave us. And he said, I want to give you this infusion to make your bones strong. My mum's played tennis for 100 years. Also, and I said, why? Knowing the adverse effects of the infusion. And he said, it's going to stop a fracture for a fall. And I said, well, the fall's got to happen first, hasn't it? And he said, yes, but at that age. So I said, so from what you've said, if mum has this infusion, it's going to stop her falling over. Because that's what he said. And he said, I didn't mean that. And I said, well, if I wasn't here, I reckon my mum would have said, yep, this is what you do. I studied on mum having a mental health assessment because sadly she had dementia. And her neurologist, which was in home, and I was there, her neurologist, geriatrician, said, now, I'd like to talk, I want to give you this medication. And I said to him, do you still have your mum? He said, yes. And I said, if your mum was sitting here, would you prescribe, in this situation, would you prescribe this medicine for her? Because I knew the adverse effects of that. He said, no. And I said, fine, then don't do it to my mother.
Wow.
Take someone with you. When you're going to go and have your checkup, if you've got elderly parents, someone, please, go with them, ask the questions, because the older generation accept what's said as absolute gospel.
I know. I ask for the blood tests of every elderly person in my family. I'm like, you just forward them on. I'll take a look, thanks. Not that I'm not a health professional,
No.
but I am very grateful to have a couple in my friendship circle that I then run things past. And it's quite frightening. You're right. It isn't gospel, and we do deserve to understand exactly why, and we do deserve to ask those reflective questions like you did. Would you put your own parent on this?
And we're not being, and don't interpret this as being disrespectful. I'm just saying these are the avenues of conversation that we need to be confident of asking in a respectful way, because it just makes sense, I believe, that often it's all about quality of life as we get older.
Yeah.
And I don't ever intend up being in the fetal position in a hospital bed with tubes coming out of every orifice. That's not my aim at all. And I don't think anyone should be in that situation. Again, another story. But the challenge is to maintain that quality of life all the way through with minimal interventions. And the last thing about any medical intervention or medication intervention is that it introduces another interference to that quality of life. Now, that may be as simple as an annoying dry mouth. It may be ringing in your ears. It may be something that has just occurred out of the blue that you never associated that adverse effect with the medication. And you should also know a little thing, no matter what age, if you're taking regular medications, write it out on a list or type it out and stick it in your wallet or your purse. Because if something untoward happens, first question you're asked is, what medication are you taking? Now, if you're lying there with a broken leg, it's a bit hard to suddenly think that you're taking something for blood pressure or something for migraine or something for whatever. Have it with you so you've got it. And if it changes, and your pharmacist will prepare that for you. Easy. They'll do it no charge. Pushes a button and out it comes. Stick it in your purse or your wallet.
Yeah, good advice. Can I ask you, Gerald, can I ask you how old you are? Is that okay to ask you that?
In November, I'm turning 77.
Oh, nice. In November, I'm turning 50.
Well,
so
happy birthday for November.
Thank you for you too. So, what does a week look like for Gerald, who looks super fit and really well and healthy? Like, skin is even glowing. Like, I'm giving you that because it really is. I can see it through the screen. What does your week look like that
Even
you would?
that's like television makeup, Alex.
Yeah, you're not even at the network today.
In my
So,
TV work, I'd be smothered in makeup, looking radiant.
yeah, well,
What
this
do I
is
do?
us being normal people, which I think is
Normal.
always a much better
Well, you do
representation.
you do see people in a normal environment. So what do I do?
Yeah.
I'm in a very privileged position where I don't attend work. I consult to an organisation called Chemist Warehouse, but more particularly the House of Wellness, which is their educational team, and I'm part of House of Wellness Media.
Mm.
Now that's been brutally retailing is what Chemist Warehouse does, and that's their role. As in all those pharmacy marketing groups, they have a role to play. However, what we've developed in House of Wellness is an educational component without advertising. We've just pushed that so we help people understand that, and we do that on radio and both television, more radio than TV. I do radio segments regularly within the 9 media network, so that's to each capital city. I do a fair bit of regional work as well, up into Queensland and regional Victoria. I attend House of Wellness Media for 3 or 4 hours every week, and the group get around me and treat me like a grandfather, which I am, and because they all appear to be just out of primary school, and we throw around ideas of what we find might get a message through. So with prostate health, just short, sharp messages that often go into social media. I love doing things like I'm doing with you today. Yesterday, I spoke at a retirement village on how to live healthily as you get older. I had an adoring audience of 80 older ladies who insisted I stay for a sausage and a bread roll for lunch. Um, I'm very much about doing things that I really get a lot of professional satisfaction was. And there was an article in the paper, all papers, just a few days ago about why people over 70 are still working. And I would contend that most health practitioners who are working over 70 are because they enjoy what they do.
Yeah.
And they are a very valued and experienced group who are underutilized from an advice mentoring component for others coming in to the market of being a health practitioner. The other thing I do, I'm very involved in a men's group, a men's club, where we meet for dinner on all Friday nights, and I go most Friday nights. I'm given a leave pass. Thank you, sweetheart, for allowing me to go to dinner on a Friday night. This is a family function, and we sing.
Oh, wow, cool.
There's all different age groups, well, mostly older farts like me, but usually middle-aged. We've got a few middle-aged blokes and a few younger blokes, which drop the average age down, so we like that. But we have dinner and we sing.
What do you sing?
We've got our own songbook where there are regular songs, so songs that you would not know, like Kansas City from Oklahoma. And
Oh, excuse me, big musical theatre fan here.
I'm getting married in the morning from My Fair Lady.
From My Fair Lady.
All of those things. And we've got regular things like, I'm just trying to think, I should drag out my songbook and show you. But we also have guest speakers there. So it is the most glamorous men's shed. But what it does is allow men to correspond and coordinate and talk with other men. And we're not saying we don't need the ladies around. In fact, we sometimes invite ladies in to join us for dinner. I mean, sometimes we do. But for the same reason my wife belongs to a ladies' club, it's good to be in an area where you've got people and you can talk about anything you want to. And there's no egos. And we say to people who join our group, and we've got 100, the place has only been going for 144 years, so it's fairly new. But nothing has changed in all that time. But the thing that we do is we care. Someone's unwell, there are steps in place that there is a group around that person to be there for them. If they lose their spouse, there is that same group who will be there for them. This, I think, is an incredible way to put back into society, for all society's done for many of us, to actually show that we care for other people as well in a meaningful way. And I find it's been one of the most, because pharmacists usually work with female pharmacists and employees with women all the way through. I've got 3 girls. We had 2 big dogs, both female, so I never had the opportunity to actually give an opinion. So it's 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 changed a little, but for that I am eternally grateful. Um, exercise wise, I go to an exercise physiology class every week, an exercise class every week. I'm on the beach. I lawn bowl. I play golf. Otherwise, I don't exercise all that much.
And foods. Everyone always wants to know about what people are eating who are healthy.
Today, I had a beta-glucan cereal for breakfast with some sliced banana, a dollop of yogurt, and full-fat milk.
Mm-hmm.
I then had no, I didn't have toast this morning because you and I were chatting early. I've had a coffee in between our break. George Clooney and I have a bit of a chat by the Nespresso machine.
Nice.
And I'm not sure when this is going to air, but there's a football match in Victoria tonight in Melbourne, a preliminary final of which my team's playing. So my wife and I are going to that. So I may have a quality meal tonight of a pie. And a bottle of water, and that'll see me through for dinner. So I haven't really thought about what I'll have for lunch. But normally I have just a fairly light breakfast, usually a fairly light lunch, and usually a not big meal. And I have a glass of wine or a Negroni or something at the end of the day. Most nights, Friday nights, that's when I meet with the boys. We would normally have fish and a choice of beef or pork or chicken. And we have 6 vegetables that has not changed for 140 years. And we have salad. So that's dinner on a Friday night. But we do have a glass of wine with our meal. We're very responsible. We have a dining room etiquette, so everyone's there in a suit and tie, and it's really well done. So that's my, and look, I like most people. I don't mind admitting I'm a member of a wine group, and I must admit that I tend to sleep well after those once a month get-togethers. But again, we have 8 people. We enjoy learning about wine that is it's all masked, and we have to talk about what it might be before we see what it really is, and we all feel stupid. But it's the sort of thing you've just got to be able to laugh. And I was just discussing this with my wife the other day. You've got to be able to laugh with the person you live with and you love. You've got to be able to take the mickey out of yourself every now and again. And my wife says she gets picked on all the time by my children, and that's probably true, but she enjoys it immensely and defends herself enormously as well. So we do laugh, and I've grown up in an environment with 3 girls, where, as I said, I could not get a word in edgeways. But I'm now sticking up for myself.
I love it. And all of the things that I've just heard there are so anti-purity culture.
Yes, they are.
Which I think has really dominated the education space in health, certainly for the last decade.
We're probably bringing up people, Alex, that it's all about them, and to a certain degree, looking after yourself is fine. But my 3 send texts, we've got a little chat group, and I encourage that. They're sending a little text to one another first thing in the morning. I've got this on today. I noticed this is happening. Love to know how you get on. That might be grandchildren playing sport of some sort, so they want to know the result. And we desperately try and see everybody at least once a week. And whether that's separately or in a chaotic environment with Philip and I, 6 adults and 6 grandchildren, it's pretty chaotic. It doesn't matter, and then when they all go home, we tidy the place up again.
Yeah, love it. Connection, laughing, support, and eating a variety of things, and not really freaking out about a glass of wine or the pie at the footy every now and then.
Enjoy what you've got in the moment, because it may not be there tomorrow. The most dangerous thing any of us can do is to get into a car and drive somewhere. Now, we don't think that's going to be like the Ernie Sigley principle. This could be the last trip in a car I ever have. But in a lot of people's world, it is. And you've got to remember to obviously, if you're going to go out and you've got someone around, give them a kiss. I'm off. See ya. Because it may be the last thing you do.
And what I know. Yeah. I'm hearing don't panic about your health.
No.
Embrace it and fight for it. That's really the message, because then the tiny odd thing, like I have this mantra, we do what we do most of the time so we can go with the flow some of the time. And that go with the flow is the social cohesion part, the caution to the wind part, because otherwise you become very vigilant about health. And I just see that backfire for so many people.
And you become boring as well. You become boring. You know, how often you go out at night and someone in your group says, I'm gluten-free. And you think, well, that's terrific. That's, what have you got on the menu? And I feel like saying, have a read of the menu, because they're clearly marked. Don't ask for the waitress or waiter to try and remember what, and then blame them if something goes wrong. Take responsibility. And if that doesn't suit, don't ruin our meal. Go off and eat at another table.
It's been fantastic chatting with you, Gerald.
You're not gluten-free, Alex, because I've offended you.
You haven't at all. I've been gluten-free for 20 years.
Oh, God, wash my mouth out. Oh, dear.
No. But more people panic about it than me. Trust me.
But
in terms of friends, are you going to be able to eat? I'm like, just don't worry. I'll find something. It's fine.
There's always something you can find, because you know what you can and what you can't eat. And even if the worst thing happens and you do eat something, you know how to manage it.
That's it. Exactly. Well, Gerald, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really look forward to sharing this with our community.
Have we solved the problems of the world?
We have. Very well, in fact.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us in listening to this week's show. If you're not already subscribed or following the show on whatever platform you listened, please do that now. It helps enormously in terms of getting this show out to more people. Another way you can connect and support the work we do so that we can support you in your low tox life is join us in the Low Tox Club. You'll get access to amazing member masterclasses where we invite some of our best show guests for a live Q&A with members. You also have great shopping discounts from low tox businesses and, honestly, the nicest low tox community Facebook group that exists on the internet. I do hope you join us there. It costs just the price of a coffee a month on average. Head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the Explore tab, and Low Tox Club is the first option there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.